think that the most important part of what we do is we use our skills to bring compassion and reason to an area where people walk into it only wanting to, they want retribution, and they want to inflict pain.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Bar podcast. I'm your host, Anisa Tova. And today we're diving deep into the world of family law with Robert Michaels, not just the world of family law, his world. He's a seasoned attorney. He's not just a lawyer, he's a skilled negotiator, trial attorney. He's a fellow of the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers and has so many varied interests. He's also a dear friend, and I cannot wait to put him in a hot seat. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here. Looking forward to it.
So I cannot believe you have been a family lawyer for over 40 years. Well, you look fabulous. How did you, not so much how did you get into this field, but how do you think about what you do today? Do you still feel passionate about it?
I do. I love it. And I also hate it. We would have to
Oh,
really parse that. There are things about it that I absolutely love. I love the challenges. I love the complexity of it. It's an ever-changing area of law. Um, it's got a lot of nuances, and you have personalities. And unlike a business deal, there's no let's get rid of this buyer and find a new one. So you have to stay in there until it's done. I think
what
also
do you hate?
the most interesting thing about it is the people that we represent. They are so mostly they you have such a diverse area of areas of different expertise on these people that you represent, and you get exposed to all these things you would never know. And it's like a novel. You learn about things in life that you would never know, about areas of business that you would never know about.
What do you hate about it?
There's an angst, there's a realization that it's the worst, absolute worst time in a living person's life. Um, Equal up there with losing a loved one to death, because it's a failure in some way, even though it might have been a major success for a very long time. And no matter how these people tell you that they hate each other, at one point they were in love with each other, and uh, they each lost something. And then, of course, you've got the collaterals that are the most important part of any case if you happen to have children involved. And there's a balance on getting what you want as a litigant and doing what's right for your kids on the other hand. And we have to teach them how to put the kids first, which is never easy.
No, no,
Yeah.
and it's tough. It's there's the underlying emotion, really, the primary emotion being a fear. And so it's just masked by anger and anxiety, and it's like ripping something from under them. So they sort of act from a shadow side, and it's tough to to see through that. You've been through a transition within that field yourself, as I understand you went from having a partnership to running your own practice. How has that changed things for you?
Well, going back though, it's not just a transition from a partnership to running my own practice. I have done transitions, not by my own decision, but just life changes. So I started out as a trial lawyer. I was trying jury trials, including professional malpractice cases, um, where you really need to know your way around a courtroom and the rules of evidence. And I found myself helping someone run their practice when they were ill with the intent that they would come back. And I took a leave from a firm that I
Mm.
was about to start with on a transition from one firm to the next. And that person that I was helping ultimately was diagnosed with brain cancer and died. And I became a sole practitioner, not by my own choice. And then I just used my skills that I had developed as a trial lawyer to deal with his caseload, which included matrimonial cases. So, unlike many of my colleagues, I didn't grow up in the matrimonial bar. And when I first began doing this, I learned from going to lectures. I learned from reading about the area of practice and ultimately developed a matrimonial practice, um, and ran my own firm. And then, after a number of opportunities to join other firms, I spoke to Bob Dobrish, and we decided to join our practices. And then we became what was known for about 11 years as Dobrish Michaels Gross. Um, and then that transition brought me back to where I had been for about 15, 20 years, running my own practice. So that's how
Yeah.
the transition is like it's a return. It reminds me of what I loved about it, and it makes me think back on how wonderful it was to have the experience of partners that I had. And I think I had partners that are two of my most, well, I respect them, among the best in our field. Both Nina Gross and Bob Dobrish are really excellent lawyers, and it was a privilege to be their partners.
Family law, it's a field that is often misunderstood, and so are divorce attorneys. What would you say are some misconceptions people have about the profession, and how, I mean, related to that, what do you
Mhm.
think it would take, one practitioner at a time to start shifting some of that paradigm?
Well, I think that generally you we get the reputation that you're referring to because people are angry and they want someone who is going to be able to advance their agenda. And the misconception is, I want a shark to represent me or something like that. I want to leave him with nothing. I want to give her nothing. And I'm going to find a lawyer. Um, and the misconception is that we're out there and that's what we do. Um, the reality is, and it's one case at a time. When a client walks into your office, I think most of us who are really experienced in this field understand that we have to manage expectations, and we are going to protect them from themselves.
Mm.
And if we could reinvent or redefine who we are, I think that the most important part of what we do is we use our skills to bring compassion and reason to an area where people walk into it only wanting to, they want retribution, and they want to inflict pain. So, how do we go about it? I think one case at a time. Anybody that leaves this office at the end, I want them to be able to say, "You helped me become the person that I once was, or that I wanted to be." In terms of how I deal with other people and how I dealt with a very difficult time in my life.
I love what
And
you
I'm
said,
happy.
compassion and reason.
Well, compassion and reason. You
Yeah.
know, we can all be smart. We don't get to this place in our lives unless we're smart. We don't achieve in a courtroom unless we have skill. But there are plenty of skilled lawyers,
Mm.
um, that are smart lawyers that do a disservice to clients, because Sometimes they have an agenda. They want to win. Sometimes they have an agenda and it is what their client wants. Um, I remember many years ago, I was involved in a incredibly difficult case, a very well-known case actually, and we tried this case over three different times. The wife in that case, the mother of the children, was not a very good person at that time of her life, and she was putting the father, who I represented, through hell. And I made a comment one day on our way down to court, and he just looked at me and said, "Mr. Michaels, she is still the mother of my children." And it stayed with me. It stayed with me because he, at that moment, put aside all the anger he had, and he recognized that at the end of the day, this was still someone who he had to care about and was very important to his children, who were the most important beings in his life.
How did you grow through this process on this career path over the decade?
Funny that you asked that. I think that I would think over the last 5 or 6 years, I have grown from where I was 5 or 6 years ago, which means I don't know that I am done. I think it's a growth process. I remember that one time I got a call from someone who, when I wasn't doing matrimonial law, it was a regular case, and they got a subpoena, and they called me up, and they were crying. It was a man, and he was crying, and he sounded like he was hyperventilating. And I told him, no, that you just have to be there at the time that it says, and so on and so forth. And I got off the phone with him, and I realized that uh, what we take as just all in a day's work is frightening to people. Walking into a courtroom is frightening to people. We do it all the time. We don't think about it. That was one of those moments in my career where I grew to understanding that these are people's lives. These are actual human beings out there. They're not just the people who happen to be part of what we're doing. So, I'm still growing. I might learn something tomorrow that I had no idea I needed to learn today.
I wonder how you're very active physically. I know you're a huge
Yeah.
fitness enthusiast. You run marathons, lift weights. I mean, those are physically demanding um interests. How does
Mhm.
that help you sort of get centered?
So everybody would say, I exercise to relieve stress. And doctors will tell you exercise to relieve stress. I never exercise to relieve stress. Or I don't, that's not my purpose. Um, it gives me a, a clarity of thought when I'm running. There are times when I run where I think of nothing. I just get lost in it. And I guess
Mm,
that's a meditation. There are
yeah.
times when I'm running where I think about something about a case that I had not thought of before. Um, so it's a necessary for me. I'm sure that people out there do other things. They will sit and do yoga, or they will um, read a book. It's an escape, and it sort of relieves whatever is on their mind and allows them to think about something else. That's what I do. It also, it just makes me feel better at this point in my life. And I don't run marathons anymore. I joke and say to my son, for instance, who runs all the time, and I say to him, in the last, when I thought that the last 3 or 4 miles of the marathon was so difficult, and I would see my time continue to increase by a minute and then a minute and a half per mile, I said, I don't run my first 1, 2, 3 miles, and that's all I do now. I don't run
Mm,
those 3 miles at the time that I used to run the last 3 miles of a marathon, but it still clears my head. So it's not really physical.
mm. Yeah, it sounds more meditative. That's what weight training is for me as well. There's sort of I pause and I'm so focused, on that connection. And it's actually, I enjoy that most than sitting on a mat and meditating. The having that clarity and almost in a strange way, it's a sense of calm.
Mhm.
Um, You have an eclectic musical taste. We chatted a little bit, and I think you enjoyed everything from R&B to rock to Broadway music. Do you remember your first concert experience?
Mm. Yeah, I do. I do. I think I went to see Sly and the Family Stone
Ooh, I love
with
them.
my older brother. But I think the concert experience I will always remember was, um, my father used to take me to concerts. It was one of those things that we did together.
Mm.
And we went to see Stephen Stills, of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And I was pretty young. I was like, I was like, I think I was maybe 20, maybe 19. And we were at the Carnegie Hall. He was playing Carnegie Hall, and or a venue like that. It was a small venue, very, very prestigious venue. And he was so drunk. He's sitting on a chair, and he forgot the words to a song. And my father was just looking at him, going, "I don't know. I mean, do you think he's okay?" And then he just fell off his chair.
Oh God.
And I thought, wow, I'm with my father at this concert, and we're both experiencing this together. Nobody would believe that, but that was the culture.
That must have
But
been a yeah.
I recently got to see Taylor Swift 2 nights in a row, and so
Wow.
that's full circle, from with my stepdaughter. Um, and that's quite a show, and it's new music, and I'm still developing new tastes for music, because if I could sit through two shows of Taylor Swift, it means that I'm still able to cultivate new interests in music.
Oh, forget about expanding your pushing yourself physically, expanding your horizons, and that's quite a show. I've never experienced it, but I understand that's quite an experience. That's amazing. And it just continues. I mean, your varied interests. I understand that you are a foodie. You really like to try out different restaurants and have a very specific taste.
Well, I have a very specific taste, as I'm a vegan, so trying out food, um, you know, there's a limitation on what I can eat, and it
Yeah.
really has to taste good, because I don't have as diverse a menu as some other people.
What yeah, what
I
do you
hear
find?
that you might be.
Yeah.
What? I was going to say, I hear that you might be going to see Taylor Swift,
Taylor Swift?
because yeah, because you have a stepdaughter who likes Taylor Swift as well.
Yes, and then
A
that's an
little bit.
understatement.
Okay.
Yes. She's a massive Swiftie, yes. I think, yes, my husband and her will definitely that's on the books, and I said to him, "Just make it happen already." Yes.
Uh-huh.
He said yeah, that's, yeah, it's an incredible I mean, the outreach and the impact and influence that she has as a human being. This is not just a pop culture icon. It's just it's amazing. It's just really amazing. What circling back to the field that you're in and incoming new attorneys. We live in interesting times, and especially after COVID, moving into, or I should say, formalizing that it was okay to move into the virtual world. And now we are faced with the technological advances. I mean, things are changing just dramatically. What would be your advice to incoming attorneys in this environment?
Wow, in this environment, I don't know. It's like it's a new world. I mean, I think that I know how to give advice to attorneys on how to prepare a case, how to prepare yourself, um, how to conduct yourself in a courtroom. It's a little different when you're talking virtually. You know, it's now to me. I don't know that I'm qualified because I'm not sure that I know how to put evidence up in a virtual courtroom, and it's something new to um, angst over, um, which I would hope to those young attorneys is is like common. It's just a common experience. Like they will not be. I'm because I'm a little scared about that. So I can't give them advice about the transition to virtual because I haven't figured it out yet.
What are some things you had to learn the hard way just in this field?
What did I learn the hard way in this field? I don't know things that I've been very lucky. Um, the field itself, the attorneys in this field that I came into contact with early on were embraced me. I have some favorites that were sort of mentors to me. Um, uh, I didn't learn things the hard way. I think I had an easy road. You know,
You know,
we're
that's
very what I was
no,
going to
that there's
say.
something in that. It's like you had mentors. You've learned from your peers, and there's something to be said about that. It really doesn't have to be that hard. It's asking questions, connecting. We spoke about it earlier about attending certain events. Really, I think
Mhm.
despite the virtual, non-virtual world, I think the tried and true would hold true is you connect, you show up, you form relationships, and you learn.
Right. I mean, I think in our field in particular, because we're not a big bar, and and especially in the Manhattan matrimonial bar, we know each other, and if we have integrity among uh, each other, if we're honest with each other, we can have conversations about cases where we actually work together and can resolve cases for the good of the case and still make sure that each of our clients wins, gets a great result. And if you do that, it's an easy road. And I have had the benefit of having lots of those kind of experiences.
Hmm.
And I've tried a lot of cases but I think that I've walked into cases for the most part. I've tried cases against people, many of whom I respect a great deal, and walked in there with the understanding that this was because neither one of us in that circumstance and our respective clients could come to a resolution on our own, not because anybody was going there out of, anger or to get even. Because if you're going in there for that reason, at the end, no one's going to be happy. And what I do learn, and I didn't learn the hard way, but I do know it to be the case, the first person to get blamed for a bad result is the attorney that stood by you and encouraged you uh, to take a position now that got rejected. Now, everybody's, in any case, there's got to be someone that is happier than the next person
Yeah.
to the other person, but you never want to be in a situation where you've overpromised someone, you've made them go to trial on something, they've spent a lot of money, and then they got the result that you should have foreseen. And if they didn't want to accept what you were telling them, you should have made it clear to them that this was their risk. So long as you do that, you're okay. But I don't think I've ever gone into trials with um, against someone who was doing that or did that on my own.
That's a great advice. That is a great insight. You're right. You get people at their worst time in their lives, and they have a certain expectation. Many of them like to be almost vindicated
Hmm.
in court, and if they do not get what they want, even though it may be unreasonable, basically, then they cycle through the attorneys onto the next one, and yeah, it is really a very difficult and challenging. It's not a job; it is a career. I have a lot of respect for it, which is why I started this podcast, so that I can, elevate the humanness of what you do. Because underneath all that, you are parents. You have to take care of. You have to sort of maintain the sense of yourself. It's it's a tough work, and I'm grateful and thankful for you to share your story here today.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure. A lot of fun.
Definitely, and this is really very insightful. And to our viewers and listeners, to find out more about Robert Michaels and how to get a hold of him, you can click on his bio link below. And do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Beyond the Bar Podcast. Follow us on all social media. And until next time, stay curious and stay inspired.